everybody, Max and Brian here, and we are joined by Todd McFarlane, legendary comics creator, toy entrepreneur, and father of Spawn, everyone's favorite ex-military special ops guy who went to hell and came back with a bitch and cape. Todd, how you doing, man?
Good. How are you guys doing? Thanks for giving me the time today.
You have something incredibly exciting. You are you launched a Kickstarter just last week.
Yep.
It already broke $1.5 million. You have a remastering of the original Spawn action figure and the original Spawn #1. We've seen albums, games, movies get remastered. How do you remaster an action figure in a comic?
I think it's fairly simple. You just basically take what you know now and you apply it to what you knew back then, right? We always have those moments. If I only knew now, I'd be a way better baseball player too. So what I did is I looked at that very first figure that basically launched our company, McFarlane Toys, and had the comic book, and we were quite proud of, because again, Image Comics, another company, had just started, and I just went, hey, if I'm going to do a Kickstarter, how should I lead out of the gate? And the obvious answer was, why don't you just go back to the very beginning when you started and take that toy, although at the time got a lot of sort of street cred. Very quickly we learned how to do it way better than that. And so I go, it's time to just take that and fast forward it and say, this is what it should have looked like if I had done it 20 years later.
Now, you guys set a goal for $100,000, and you're up to 1.5 million right now. There was like a whole.
We hit the 100,000 in 11 minutes.
Good God.
So I was going to ask you, like, did you even have time to be like, what if this doesn't work? Because I feel like you had 11 minutes in, you're like, no, this is working. What was the sort of like emotional roller coaster of all of that?
Well, it's interesting. I've never done a Kickstarter or crowdfunding. What ends up happening, which is interesting, is that maybe you guys have seen it before. You can see the numbers going like in real time. So it looks like either you hit the slots or you're filling up your big dual engine truck, because it just keeps ringing up the number. I actually, it's interesting. I was looking at my phone. I actually got a screen grab where it got to 14,000, and I went, "Oh my gosh, 14,000!" And I thought that because it happened so quickly, right? 14,000, and then my wife called me, and I went downstairs, and I had to help her with something. And by the time I came back up, we were already funded. Literally in 10 minutes, we were funded.
So let's talk about this new Spawn figure. I've got the Mortal Kombat Spawn here, who's one of kind of the new McFarlane toys, like ultra articulated. It's got tons of joints and everything. But the one you're remastering is sort of taking the classic 1995 one, and you're retooling it. It's got the classic Spawn aesthetic, but with some modern tooling. Can you walk us through a little bit, sort of the different kind of bells and whistles you got there?
The first one we did was sort of classic action figures back in the mid 90s when my company started. And traditionally, most action figures got 5 points of articulation, right? You got your head, your 2 arms moved, and your 2 legs moved, right? And that was it. That was sort of the sum total of it. But now people have an expectation. They want more. We've gotten better with the sculpting. We've gotten better with articulation. We've gotten better with, bigger with scale, with how cool some of the weapons can look and all those other kind of things. And so we're just going to do all of that. Plus, redoing the cover that was for the comic book. It's the actual comic book that came in the actual toy itself. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but there's sort of my draw over.
Oh man,
that's my
awesome.
that's my draw over on it. If I click off the drawing, here's what the original comic cover looked like for the toy.
That's right. I forgot you had, because there were special comics that were like, Violator had a truck suddenly. Like it was, They were very toyetic.
I think I may have one here if you guys let me run real quick. So here's the package. Here's the original package, right? So here's the toy. And again, hopefully I don't get the glare, but there was the comic book that came in. If you turn it around, there was like 6 of them. They each came with a comic book, and there were 6 figures that came with it. So, but you can see, like I was talking about, I mean, here's, it was just the only movement in the arm was just the swivel going up and down.
Yeah.
You had a head turn, and you had the 2 legs, and you had rubber chains, and that was it. I mean, it came with the cape. And the sexy thing about the cape was, you know, it sort of hinged and it folded up on him because that's how he was packaged. We're going to do the same thing, right? Just that our cape's going to be way bigger now.
Oh God, yeah.
And the scale of him, just so you guys can see, right? Here's the two of them side by side.
Wow.
I love it.
Now one's going to be much bigger than the other one by about 1.5 inches, which basically means then that the cape gets way bigger, which means then that the packaging will get way bigger. So the box it's going to come in is going to be fairly significant, fairly huge. I've got one here.
That's awesome.
It's pretty mondo, right? So you're going to take it, and then you're going to push it open. You're going to take the sleeve off, you're going to have your big sexy thing with a black on black logo, because why? That makes you hip if you do black on black. And then you open it up, and then once you open it up, then you're going to get the toy's going to be in here with all the foam and all the extra pieces and all the heads and all the weapons.
All right, so that definitely feels like a far cry from the Spawn action figures that I was, buying at Caldor in 1995. Like, we've come a long way here. I want to talk about this. This is your first time doing Kickstarter.
Right.
You've kind of talked about resurrecting
any crowdfunding.
McFarlane did have like sort of a fan club, like where it was a mail away thing for more specialty type stuff.
Yeah.
Is Kickstarter sort of a way of circumventing that and just really properly gauging the interest in a particular, maybe more collector oriented product?
Kickstarter. Well, here's why I did a crowdfunding and we happened to pick a Kickstarter was, as I said before, I mean, obviously we've sold to a specialty shop. We've sold to big retailers, right? Toys R Us, Walmart, Kmart, Target, all the big boys over the years and the decades. I've done, .com stuff, even on spawn.com itself. And then sort of everything in between, stuff like Tower Records and KB Toys we used to sell to, and GameStop currently and things like that. But I'd never done a true crowdfunding. I don't know if it's the way to go, but what I was curious about is we'd never done it, so we didn't have any data, and so it's tough to make any decision about something unless you've done it, right? So again, this is going back to your kids. Like, I hate mushrooms. Well, how do you know? You've never tasted them, right? So I'm just sort of saying, hey, I've got a lack of data on crowdfunding. Why don't instead of talking about it, why don't we actually do it?
That being said, you mentioned Toys R Us. I was pretty bummed when that store went away a couple years ago. One of the ones they brought back, they did like this sort of like, boutique-y pop-up shop thing a year later. And one of the ones that they brought back was the childhood one I went to in New Jersey growing up. So I was really excited about that. But do you think there's space for like a dedicated toy store chain to return, or do you think it's sort of just going to move into online? And like, how will kids find new toys?
Here's what's interesting. Toys R Us Canada is thriving, right? So
yeah.
What ended up happening, and I saw it when I entered the toy business way back in late '94, was Toys R Us was the king of toys at that point, but there was this giant coming behind them called Walmart that was just about ready to crush it, right? So Toys R Us was still the dominant in terms of dollars buying machine, and then Walmart came in and crushed it. The problem with what you're saying is to do a geek shop, if you will, and stuff like GameStop has tried it somewhat, and a couple other people, even Walmart talks about having their little collector corner, but they can't really do it right because you need a lot of space and a lot of room. Just like if you go into a comic shop, you've got to be able to show all the comics and posters and games and toys and all those other things that go along with being sort of geek and fandom. And so, is there room for it? Possibly. But I'm guessing that the easier model, to your point, is that doing it on the internet, and you don't have to have 100 stores. You can have one website, and you just ship everything out of the same warehouse. Is probably a more effective way of getting there.
It's also, it's a great way of you are reaching those direct fans who maybe, you don't have to really catch the eyes of people who are browsing. It's more about like finding people who want a specific thing and really reaching that audience. You've mentioned in the past the possibility of the return of Clive Barker's Tortured Souls. Do you see Kickstarter or crowdfunding being a way for that to happen?
Well, either through crowdfunding and or through my own internet and or in partnership with other internet. Here's why, because it's interesting. People were saying, Todd, why do you have to do Kickstarter? I don't. The answer is I don't. So I was just doing an experiment. But here's why I did go, because when we first started our company years and years ago, and I don't know how old you gentlemen are, but we used to sell to stores like Babbage's, KB Toys,
Yep.
Virgin Records, Tower Records, these sort of hipster places. And not only would they sell toys, but they actually, if I walked in and said, hey, I got this crazy idea, and Walmart and Target aren't taking it, their eyes even got bigger, right? Which is why we could sell the Tortured Souls, and we could sell the Twisted Oz, and we could sell all the crazy stuff that we did, the Movie Maniacs and all that other stuff that worked for us so well at the beginning of it. They didn't have to compete with the same product, because if they did, and you're competing against Walmart, Target, you're going to get into a bidding war of the price, and you're never going to beat them on price. So what they wanted was items that they weren't carrying, and this is why I think some of the internet and some of the smaller stores can still compete, because they can carry the stuff that the big guys won't. And so now we can just say, hey, big business, if you don't have a model that gets it, or if you just personally don't get it yourself, move out of the way, because there's now a way for me to get to my consumer, or vice versa.
So that actually brings me to my next question. We're seeing everything getting horribly disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic. You've been hustling really hard on the Spawn movie, trying to get that off the ground. You said Jamie Foxx is still interested. We've seen sort of live action production in Hollywood get horribly derailed by people not being able to do anything but remotely. But we've also seen, I've heard that sort of animation is doing okay, because that can be done remotely. Yeah. Would you ever want to maybe see Spawn return in animated form like he did on the old HBO show?
Oh yeah, look, animation's coming back before I die. That's a given. I'll get it done. I'm too stubborn on it. Here's the thing that's interesting. I was just talking to some people yesterday. The comic book industry is shut down, right? No new comic books, right? I'll adhere to that for just a short period of time, because again, we want to salvage all the stores and stuff. But the longer it goes, the more stores are going to go out of business. And if it goes really long, this is the piece that nobody really wants to actually say out loud. What if it goes for a year? Then there are going to be whole industries that are going to get wiped out. Here's the advantage that we have in comic books, and you mentioned it with animation. We can make comic books from a distance, and we do it isolated anyways. Making comic books is an isolated job. One person sits and writes it, and then triggers a button that goes to somebody else. They sit in a room by themselves and draw it, and then send it. And so that person sits in a room and colors it. We can make the advantage we have right now in comic book industry is that we can actually make the comic books, and nobody's going to be near anybody. Right? The comic collectors, the geeks, they're going to still want it. And the only thing that's disrupting all of this is the delivery mechanism, right?
Right.
So we need to protect the delivery mechanism because it has a great value. But at some point, if that delivery mechanism starts to erode as time goes by, and at some point vanishes altogether, and all we've been doing is just waiting, we're going to be behind. We're going to be behind the 8 ball, right? And so I'm going to be patient for a little bit, and then if nobody else wants to go, I'm going to get aggressive on my own. Because doing nothing is not going to solve any corporation, any industry, any job right now saying, hey, let's just do absolutely zero when you can, right? We can draw comic books today and not have to be within 100 feet of the next human being. Why don't we take advantage of that? I don't know why we're not taking advantage of it.
No, it makes perfect sense. And then you just deliver them digitally and people have them instantly, which is great. And I guess
through the mail, or you give it to the shops or whatever else. I mean, but to not be doing comic books, to not at worst stockpiling the comic book.
Did you have any like favorite toys from your childhood growing up that you lost or you got rid of or disappeared in a move that you ever tried to hunt down? Because I know Max and I find ourselves doing that a lot.
Yeah. And this is why eBay is such a great like godsend, right? Because all those things that you used to look for when you were younger, you can now go, oh my gosh, I can find it. So when I was a kid, I mean, again, I'm gonna age myself a little bit. So I was a kid of the '60s, right? So the toys that I played with, I was there at the beginning of Hot Wheels, right? My brother still has a collection that still has some of those original Hot Wheels still in their original packaging, all the way back from like 69, 70 when it started. There was another line of toys called Major Matt Mason. It was this guy, and he had like wire in him, and he was an astronaut, and you could bend it. But then there was this big giant guy that was there, and you pressed buttons on him, and you put on these things, and the LEDs would light up. It was super cool. I've got one. I don't want me to go run to my other drawer, but I still have them. And then you used to have, remember GI Joe with Kung Fu Grip? I was never that guy. But what ended up happening was there another group came out that was called Captain Action, and Captain Action was like sort of the Barbie for boys. But Captain Action was, I thought, was kind of cool because you could get Captain Action, and then you could put him in and make him Flash Gordon. You could make him the Lone Ranger, but then you could also make him Superman and Batman. You could get all the superheroes, and then they came out with Action Boy, and then you could get Action Boy and dress him up as Robin and as Aqualad and as Kid Flash and all these other things, and you're going, oh my gosh! And then the best one of that whole bunch was Dr. Evil, the original Dr. Evil. And Dr. Evil was this guy, and he was blue. He was in this sort of like hippie outfit, but he was all blue, and he had like his brain showing. And then, but he came with like a flesh head, so that like you could disguise him, even though he still had blue neck and blue hands, and he wore sandals, so he had blue feet. Nobody could see that it was a fake mask. But I thought Dr. Evil, because he looked like a monster, I thought he was super cool too.
Awesome.
The Captain Action thing is brilliant because I feel like they could have sold like 14 action figures, but they sold one with a bunch of costumes, and it's a great toy. It's not a great business though.
Cosmetic DLC. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Todd, thank you so much for joining us, and congrats on the success of the Spawn Kickstarter. If you want to get in on that, you can head over to Kickstarter and take a look at it. It's hard to miss. It's Spawn Remastered. If you want to keep up with what Todd's doing, he's on all various social media platforms. You do a ton of Instagram live stuff, which I really appreciate. You're always doodling and showing off your work.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a couple other things before we go.
Sweet. Yeah, show and tell.
Because as soon as we get off the phone here, I'm going to upgrade the Kickstarter again. I keep doing these upgrades, right? Again, and it's weird. Kickstarter is a weird thing. They're like, do stretch goals, which basically mean charge us more money and give us something, make us reach for it. And I keep doing the opposite. I keep saying, hey, I keep picking a number that essentially is like $1 from the time so everybody gets it. I just keep giving them free stuff, and some people are a little confused. You need to do stretch goals. It's like, yeah, sorry that I keep giving you free stuff for nothing, right? Like, but we're trained that we got to give you more money and reach, and I'm like, no, I'm giving you stuff for free. My bad, right? So
yeah, all your Kickstarter updates are you holding up a sign that say free on it.
Right. So one of them is going to come with this sort of unpainted head, because we're doing like what we call the screaming head, and everybody's been screaming at me, going, Todd, you need to do a painted version of that for the painted toys and stuff. So I just got it. My painter just handed it to me. So there's the painted version.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm going to be announcing that this head they've been screaming about, the screaming head, they're going to get it. So
sweet.
Because we had the other head, like the shoelace head.
Good old football face there.
We're going to do that. And then one last thing, I play a lot of board games too, pass the time, right? So the games I've been playing, which may seem like, good point, Todd. I've been conflicted on like how I play. So one is Pandemic. I've been playing that one a lot, and then sometimes I shift over to this other one called Hospital. So, but I'm conflicted. Do I play the Hospital and feel good about the Hospital, and then try to tackle the Pandemic, or do I tackle the Pandemic and then go to the Hospital? Because I go back and forth. I vacillate between these two board games that are both kind of cool. So, we've also got our Wonder Woman toys coming out, although they have to bounce the movie. We got that. What else we got? We got our Batman and our Joker from the video game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He's cool. So he's gonna be cool. So,
cool.
Look at guys, while I'm bunkering in, my hands are far from idle. They're going. Don't you worry about me, gentlemen.
You got to keep busy. Well, anyway, if you want more Todd, he's out there. He's keeping busy. He's doing lots of stuff. Get yourself an action figure. Get yourself some comic books and have some fun. Put on a cape. Everyone put on a cape. Anyway, Todd, thank you for joining us.
All right, gentlemen, thanks for your time again.
See you next
Bye,
time.
Todd.